This lecture covers sociological insights
This lecture
into the topic
covers
of
basic
deviance.
sociological insights into the topic of deviance. It's important to understand that in sociology, the term deviance is not a value judgment. Rather, it's a description of how something varies from what is considered to be the societal norm. Deviance is ultimately simply norm violation. What is deviant is always relative to that particular culture. Not only does deviance change across place, what is considered to be deviant and what is considered to be normal also changes over time. Symbolic interactionist Irving Goffman used the term stigma to describe any characteristic that might discredit a person. Some examples of these might be unusual physical features, facial paralysis, or disabilities. People sometimes then ask, are norms a problem? Are they bad? Norms are necessary for social life. They make human behavior predictable. Without norms, we would have no way to interact with others. You're going to come across the terms social order and social control. Social order refers to the customary social arrangements of a group. Social control is how you enforce the norms of that group. Social control mechanisms might be formal, things that are institutionalized, such as the law, or they might be informal, not written down, but enforced through things like ostracism, teasing, dirty looks, or reprimands. Sanctions are key means of social control. Sanctions are used to enforce norms. Some norms are more important to our culture than others, and therefore the sanctions are proportionate to how important that norm is. Negative sanctions are what we typically refer to as punishments. They might be formal, such as imprisonment, or they could be informal, simply being excluded from a social group. Positive sanctions include rewards. They might be formal, you might receive an award or a promotion, or they could be informal. Someone could give you a pat on the back after a good presentation. How is deviance explained by social scientists? Sociobiologists look at how genetic predispositions interact with the environment to explain deviance. Psychologists focus more on individual characteristics such as personality disorders. They might look to environmental or biological causes for these problems. Sociology focuses on social factors that influence someone to break the norms, such as social inequality. What are some classic sociological theories about deviance? It's important to remember that classic theory is very important because these are the enduring ideas that shape our perspectives today. I'd like to add that in sociology, there's been a shift away from grand narratives to more mixed perspectives, and that's important to keep in mind. Just because a theory is no longer used or has been proved problematic doesn't mean it doesn't have some insights that we could still keep in mind today. Sometimes a theory has been discredited, but the methodology used to create it was important, and therefore we still study the theory. Symbolic interactionism provides us with several different interesting perspectives for understanding deviance. Differential association theory, pioneered by Edwin Sutherland, looks at how we learn deviance from groups with whom we associate. Some groups promote norms that are at odds with current standards. Some groups promote norms that are consistent with larger cultural standards. In this view, criminal behavior is learned through interaction with other people who engage in criminal behavior. Generally, this kind of learning would include not only learning how to be a criminal, but also taking on the attitudes, motivations, rationalizations of other criminals. Differential association theories highlight the influence of families, friends, and neighborhoods. From our families, we learn to either deviate or conform to wider societal norms. For example, if everyone in your family is engaged in a criminal enterprise, it's much more likely that you will also engage in that enterprise. Friends and neighborhoods are also important. What you see as normal within your community may not be normal within the community at large. Control theory argues that the desire to deviate is actually very common, but there's two control systems that we've learned that prevent this. Our inner control system is our learned morality, our desire to be seen as a good person by the larger culture. The outer control system is people who influence us not to deviate, our friends and family who might discourage us from engaging in a deviant act. The stronger your bonds or attachments are to your larger community, the more effective these controls are likely to be. It's important to keep in mind that your control systems are not just out there, they're tied to your explicit society. So your morality is not an inherent thing, but something you learned from your culture. Labeling theory asserts that once someone is labeled in a specific way, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. They're encouraged to behave in ways that are consistent with that label, and their behaviors are interpreted in ways that are also consistent with this label. One example I can think of is being gifted versus being put in classes for students who need English as a second language. These are often treated as mutually exclusive, even though they're not. How does this impact the educational experience of students for whom English is a second language? It means that they're never, quote-unquote, labeled as gifted. Structural functionalist theory also provides us with a number of interesting perspectives on deviance. Durkheim highlighted the way that deviance actually contributes to social order. Durkheim argued that deviance clarifies moral boundaries and affirms norms. If we didn't have people deviating, we wouldn't be reminded of what our norms were and where the line that demarcates them is. Deviance also encourages social unity, that through punishing deviance, we get a sense of cohesion and it reaffirms our norms. And finally, deviance promotes social change. It may lead to norms being rethought or updated. Robert Merton's structural strain theory is also crucial. According to strain theory, crime is a natural part of society, not an aberration. Not everyone has the same access to institutional means of success. When people experience this, they feel frustrated. They're doing what they're supposed to do, but they're not getting ahead. This may result in them choosing a deviant path in order to meet societal norms of success. Merton highlights 4 deviant paths. Innovators, who accept our goals but reject the institutionalized means to achieve them. Ritualism, you give up on getting ahead but just go through the motions. Retreatism, you reject the goals and the means for achieving them, you withdraw from society. And rebellion, you reject the goals and the means and instead posit an alternative. Illegitimate opportunity structures refer to the appeal of avenues to success that are potentially problematic. You might be able to make a lot of money engaged in criminal enterprises, but that creates a lot of problems for society as a whole. Conflict theory perspectives tend to see the justice system as an instrument of oppression against the poor. They highlight the ways that social stratification influences who is punished for crime and how they're punished. For example, street crime is disproportionately punished compared to white-collar crime, though white-collar crime causes far more damage to our economy and often to persons. 2 key areas of study within the field of deviance today are criminalization and medicalization. Criminology looks at stratification in crime. Today, criminologists are interested in what types of crimes are punished and who is more likely to be tried and convicted. Another key area of debate is the prison industrial complex and the profitability of crime. Many highlight the ways that prison itself has become a for-profit industry and the problematic impact of this. Medicalization looks at redefining certain problems and citizens as requiring medical intervention. Michel Foucault is a key theorist in this area. One example is that homosexuality used to be included in the DSM and until 1986 was considered a mental disease or disorder. That was one way of taking a certain segment of the population and labeling them deviant and in need of intervention. Today, we don't see alternate sexualities as quote-unquote deviant.